Let's turn now to the Saudi sheep deal and the 15-month investigation into it. It's raised major concerns about a lack of transparency from the government. Says it concealed the true nature of the deal from the public. Some pretty fascinating language in this report. Yet the long-awaited Auditor-General's report has found no evidence that the Saudi sheep deal amounted to corruption or bribery, as ministers didn't personally benefit from the deal or act against the law. Now, shortly we'll talk to our political reporter, Benedict Collins, who has been following this. He was at the media conference this afternoon when the Foreign Minister, Murray McCully, who led the deal, reacted to the report. But first, this report from Benedict.
The government is giving $11.5 million worth of cash, livestock and agricultural equipment to a billionaire Saudi livestock importer to appease him and help secure a free trade deal with the Gulf states. For a year and a half, Murray McCully has been under fire for the Saudi sheep deal. Today he seized upon the finding that he didn't act corruptly.
You may recall that in relation to this matter, some very strong, colourful and defamatory statements were made suggesting that there had been corruption, bribery, facilitation payments, dodgy deals, that sort of thing. And the Auditor-General has found quite clearly that there was no bribery, no corruption, no facilitation payments, and that all of the payments were made lawfully and within the scope of the appropriation for which they were provided.
But that was the only silver lining for Mr McCully in what was a very critical report about his deal. The Auditor-General, Lynn Provo, says she shares the concerns of many New Zealanders about the lack of transparency around the deal. She also said that the establishment of an agri-hub in the Saudi desert, that the public was told would showcase the very best of New Zealand agriculture, was nothing more than a guise for the settlement of Hamoud Al-Khalaf's grievance. Mr McCully says he accepts the findings.
The Auditor-General does say that there was room for improvement in relation to two matters. Firstly, that the use of a contract for services in this case was, I think, viewed as problematic. And secondly, that the Cabinet paper should have given more analysis than it did on some matters. In relation to any criticism of the process, I would simply say that we'll take that on the chin.
The Auditor-General also says that she shares the concerns of many New Zealanders about the lack of transparency regarding this deal from start to finish, pretty much to now. She says even government ministers have still failed to properly explain many aspects of this deal. I mean, is that acceptable?
I'd put that down to being a joint failing of government ministers and the New Zealand media.
Labour's Shadow Attorney-General David Parker won the right to hold a snap debate on the report in Parliament this afternoon. He says the report did not exonerate the government.
It lays bare an absolutely disgraceful stain upon the record of New Zealand, which has acted immorally, improperly, wasted millions of dollars, covered it up, lied to the Parliament, lied to the public, and it is only because of the very good services of a couple of journalists in particular that this even came to light.
That's David Parker, who'll be joining us live on Checkpoint later. Joining us live on Checkpoint right now is Benedict Collins. Good to have you with us, Benedict. I'm looking at the report. 3.31, Ministry's legal advisers were not asked for input. 3.38, the Treasury's pre-cabinet briefings to the Minister of Finance in February expressed concern about a lack of clarity. The Minister of Finance was recommended not to support the proposal. 3.34, significant shortcomings. 3.36, shortcomings, lack of transparency, and on and on and on. I mean, we've only got 90 minutes on this program. Murray McCully is saying exoneration with some small qualification. Is it?
Well, I mean, from his point of view, yes it is. I mean, he's not going to get sacked immediately. It found this wasn't a corrupt deal. It found that this wasn't bribery. You know, government ministers, officials, they didn't stand to gain personally. They didn't act, with bad intentions here. But I mean, this report really, as you've just explained there, John, really does explain just what a shoddy process this was. I mean, it talks about the agri-hub in Saudi Arabia that we were all told would showcase the best of New Zealand agriculture just been a guise to, placate Hamoud al-Ali al-Khalaf, who of course was angry with the New Zealand government because back in the early 2000s we stopped exporting live sheep there because of animal welfare concerns. And of course, as people who've been following this story, like I have for 18 months, will know, the government, even as part of this deal, flew 900 sheep on a Singapore Airlines flight up to the Saudi desert. All their lambs died as soon as they got up there. And I mean, this report just, really does sort of indicate how shoddy things were.
Yeah, and a sense of a somewhat craven desire to keep this character happy, disguised as something else, even in cabinet papers. Now, the Auditor-General is very clear there is no corruption here because no one was personally benefiting from it. But, boy, this absence of transparency, which is referred to over and over, and 5.14, Cabinet was asked to note the expenditure rather than agree to it. Now, that stuff smells, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's fascinating looking at this. The Auditor-General says Cabinet didn't even know that Al-Khalaf was going to end up owning all this equipment and all the livestock that we were sending him. It seems remarkable that you'd take a paper to Cabinet that was so flawed.
Why would you do that, Benedict? Cognizant of the rules of defamation.
Yes. I mean, so it's going to be really interesting to see how things play out here. The government saying, hey, we're in the clear, but you've got the Green Party today. They said, hey, look, they still think, hey, it might not be illegal, but they still think, McCulley should be held to account here for this really, really shoddy deal.
Yes, is McCulley going to be held to account? The Prime Minister seems to be standing by him this afternoon. What next?
Yeah, well, the Prime Minister, he made some comments on the way into Parliament that I was present for. He was saying, this was a difficult situation and that he thought McCulley had done his best in this situation. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see, further comments that the Prime Minister makes about this.
So, are we being told that the end justified the means?
Well, certainly the government's, that's what the government's telling us, yeah.
Yeah, and what is the Auditor-General saying? She's not that clear on that, is she?
Well, no. So she I think she toes quite a careful line here between, saying, well, there isn't corruption or bribery. She says, and it was interesting, listening to Mr. McCulley talk earlier today, saying, he'd been the victim of, accusations of being corrupt or
yes,
bribery.
He said defamatory accusations.
Yeah, that's right. And yet the Auditor-General says, hey, well, when there's such a lack of transparency from start to finish, that creates the conditions for these sort of accusations to thrive. So he's very much the author of the situation he finds himself in, I think.
Benedict Collins, our political reporter who's been covering the story for RNZ. Thanks, Benedict. We do have a bid in for the Minister to join us. The bid remains open, of course, and David Parker, who was fairly vehement about this in the House for Labour this afternoon, will join us after